Hi, and welcome to the Bi.4.Twi Podcast. I'm your host, Ellis Golden, admin of the Bi.4.Twi Instagram account. And as you may notice, I am in Alice cosplay. Kind of. It's lazy day Alice cosplay, though I did go full with the contacts, so that's fun. I am just going to go ahead and jump right into the interview/conversations that I had with my amazing guest, two Alice cosplayers, Jenny and Vee. And why am I still talking? Let them take it away. All right, so now I am joined by world famous Alice cosplayer, Vee. And as you can see, I am dressed up for the occasion. I figured it was only fair since we see this lovely lady in Alice cosplay all the time. I was like, the least I can do is do half as much as she puts in. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe how you got started?
Sure. Thank you so much for the kind introduction. Always love to see a fellow Alice on my screen. But for those who don't know me, my name is V. Online, I go by VL as Alice Cullen, and I am the official Alice Cullen cosplayer for the Olympic Coven cosplay troupe, which is the official acting troupe cosplay performance players of the Forever Twilight and Forks Festival in Forks, Washington. So what does that mean? It means that every year at the Forever Twilight and Forks Festival around Bella's birthday, my troupe and I descend upon the town of Forks and we bring an immersive element to life at the fan festival. So imagine going to Disney World and meeting your favorite Disney princess or meeting Mickey Mouse and getting to have that immersive in-character experience with those characters. We do the same for Twilight. So if you come to Forks during the festival and you meet the Olympic Coven, you will have an opportunity to meet Alice, Bella, Jacob, the Nomads, all your favorite Cullens, and speak to them in character as if they were real people living in the real town of Forks, Washington. And that's what we do as a labor of love and as performers for our fellow Twilight fans.
Yes, and I got to see it for the first time in person this past year in 2023. It was my first time being in Washington at all, and it was so magical and so cool. I remember um, one thing that was funny and unexpected was the nomads kind of circling at the initial meet. And so for that initial meet, it's like we couldn't interact with them and take photos. They were like lurking in the background, and it was very funny. Added an extra layer of immersion.
They're so good at what they do. I think they take it as a point of pride if they can get like a child to cry or like an adult to like cringe away from them, because they are genuinely unnerving and scary and they are, again, just so good at what they do. But I would love to know what you thought. First time in Washington, first time at the festival, first time encountering this whole kind of immersive production. What did you think?
I loved it. I'm someone who I don't know. I haven't gone to a lot of festivals and conventions past like early high school. Arkansas doesn't really have a lot because we're Arkansas. So growing up, I didn't really go to a lot, but I got into like anime in middle school. And so I went to like a few of the kind of lame conventions that we have. Um, but Twilight, especially, there was like nothing for Twilight, not even just like convention or festival. I'm talking about like anything Twilight related, like midnight showing, any sort of thing like that did not really exist here. Like I just didn't have a community. So it was really cool to get to go to a place where everyone you turn to. It's not like oh, by the way, I like Twilight. It's like we all like Twilight. We're all here for Twilight. And it's so
Exactly.
cool. Yeah, and it was like great to see you guys. Because I mean, obviously I see you on the screen, but actually getting to see everyone in person and see how they demonstrate their character, like physicality wise, was like really cool. I remember Samantha, who plays Bella, I had an interaction with her, and I think it was like the first interaction I had with someone in character at the festival. and she was doing the whole, like, awkward thing, and, like,
It's
she
so
did kind
good.
of like a little punch on the shoulder and stuff, and it was just so I was like, "Oh my gosh, wait, it's feeling real now."
I totally know what you mean. I'm from Toronto. So we didn't have much opportunity for like Twilight experiences here either. Like I feel like the US got most of them, but then
Mm.
from the sounds of it, only like major markets probably, or like it was happening more so in major markets. So like, we didn't really get the special screenings, the red carpets, the conventions, all of that either. So being able to go to Forks and finding out that there was this entire like ecosystem of just Twilight stuff, of people coming to Forks and making this magic and being there all for the same reason in a safe space. Because I mean, we all know around the time Twilight was first coming out, it was not cool to be a Twilight fan. Like we're in the midst of a renaissance right now. It's a little bit camp to be a Twilight fan now. Everyone kind of understands the appeal a bit more than they did back in the day. But it was tough to be a Twilight fan. So Forks has always really been this safe space, this haven for fans, and that's why I'm so grateful for the festival for continually providing us with that space and that opportunity to like stretch our wings and perform and like immerse ourselves in the story a little bit. And that's what's so fun about doing what we do, is because it's not just the fact that like we get to do it. It's like, okay, I'm living this fantasy of like being this character. It's that we get to interact with fans and you're bringing something to life for them because they can't fathom a world where like maybe in their hometowns they could do this like safely and just
Yeah.
geek out and be a fan and talk about what they love. But in Forks, they can, and they get to say it directly to the character. And that is such a fun, special thing. And I don't think that's a privilege that we take lightly at all. Like, we know that everyone coming to Forks has their own story, has their own reason for being there. And the fact that they trust us with that is huge.
Yeah, definitely. And you've been doing it for quite a while because, I've been on your website and stuff before, and you have like all these articles dating back. Like, how long have you been doing it like at FTF?
Yeah, at FTF since 2013. So I did celebrate my 10-year anniversary last year, which is crazy to think that I've been doing it that long. And it's one of those things where it's like, oh, do you ever think about maybe like, is it time to move on? Or, for me, it's always like, am I having fun doing this? Am I meeting cool people? Am I making cool connections? And am I still bringing something new to the character every year? Because the great opportunity about doing this for so long is that I can look at my performance year over year and say, man, I wish I had done that last year, but I know
Yeah.
more this year. I'm a more mature, smarter, more confident version of myself this year. And I can bring that into my characterization of Alice year over year. So rather than getting tired of doing it, I find that I come back every year more invigorated to do a better job than I did the year before. So yeah, started as Alice officially with the Olympic Coven in 2013. I was cast in 2011, but couldn't come to the festival for the first 2 years of its inception as that version of Stephanie Meyer Day. It started, I think, back in 2009, but it was more of like a couple of days or maybe like a 1 day
Mhm.
thing. Then it kind of evolved into this weekend, and then it became really big in 2015.
Yeah.
Rebranded as Forever Twilight and Forks. But originally it was Stephanie Meyer Day. It was a 1 day thing that grew. I was cast in 2011, couldn't come for 2 years because of my job, and then was finally able to come in 2013. So it's been so interesting watching it get bigger, better, more immersive, more celebrities, more fans every single year. And I cannot wait to see what they do in 2024. We've had some early discussions about, what the festival is going to look like from a schedule perspective, who the special guests might be, what the immersive schedule might look like. And I think fans are going to be really, really, really excited with what's planned.
I'm already excited and I don't even know anything. I don't have any like backstage tea or like secrets, but it's like I literally last day of the festival, I went ahead and like booked my hotel for next year. I was like, oh, I'm
That's
on
the
it.
way to do it. They have a slogan, and it's funny that you are contemplating all of this because they say, come for Twilight, stay for Forks. I think they know that people fall in love with the area because there is so much to offer, in terms of the beauty, in terms of the isolation, if you're more of a homebody or a
Yeah.
hiker, somebody who really appreciates the outdoors and doesn't need to be in the hustle and bustle of like a big city all the time. It's a great place to escape to. It does feel magical. For me, I am a big city girl. Like I said, I'm from Toronto. I love the hustle and bustle of the city. I love being able to hop on the subway and go to the mall, a movie, go to a cute cafe down the street. Like I love that. I love the walkability of the city. So when I go to the PNW, it does feel like an escape. It feels very far removed from my everyday life. So when I'm there, I find that I'm just able to like decompress, really get in the moment, like really absorb the Twilight vibes. Like everything does feel like it's seen through this beautiful blue haze, this filter. Like it
Mhm.
does feel like you're stepping into another world when you're there. So it's very easy to get into that mindset. Um, so for me, it is super different from Toronto, but if you're from the West Coast in Canada, like Vancouver, for example, it may not feel that different to you because they do get the rain, they do get the fog. You know, it is dark for X number of months a year. So there are climates in Canada that are like that, but it's so far removed from my everyday life that it always feels like such a treat and such an escape and just so different to go there. And actually, I'm headed there next week, not to date the episode, I don't know when it's airing, but I'm heading there for FTF Equinox,
Yes.
which is running from March 15th to the 17th. And this is focused more on the books, which is why I love this event. I am a book girly first.
Same.
I love the characterization in the book, and it's rare to meet someone who prefers the books because I think people are
Yeah,
so attached to the image of the movie and the actors, and that for me definitely has a time and a place. And, you know, I've met many of the actors through FTF. I've been very fortunate enough to do that. They're all very sweet people, very proud of what they accomplish, and so they should be. But my heart is always going to be with the books and that first impression that I had of everything. And that to me is what Forks really personifies. And that's why I love FTF Equinox perhaps equally to the Forever Twilight and Forks Festival, because it's so book focused, it's very intimate. You know, we get to kind of bring to life what we think the characters might have looked like in the books versus, you know, trying to be a carbon copy of what you see
yeah.
in the film, which again is its own skill set, has its own time and place, but there's also something to be said for putting your own spin on something. And I love being able to do that.
Definitely. And I think something that's unique, you mentioned the books like being your first impression. And so that sort of set the stage for you. And it's kind of hard for the movies to live up. I was 7 when the first movie came out,
Oh,
and
wow.
that's how I saw it. We have younger Twilight fans, but I'm
Yeah.
definitely like I got into it very early. I essentially kind of grew up with it. Um, and so the movie was my first experience because I was a reader at 7, but I wasn't picking up
Yeah.
Twilight, reading it,
I mean, they're pretty thick tomes. Like
Yeah.
I don't think debut authors now are being given the leeway that Stephanie Meyer had to like write the first Twilight, where it's like nothing is, not to say nothing is happening, but there is a build to Twilight
Oh,
that like
yeah.
if you're like an author who's writing a book now, like they want you to like publishing houses want you to be like starting with the action in like the first chapter, whereas like it was like a really slow burn of build with Twilight. And as again, the book was this thick, so I'm not surprised you didn't read it when you were 7 and that your first look was at the movie. But how did you process all of that at 7? Like, what did you think at age 7 watching this? Was this just like a really interesting? Did it do anything for you? Like, did you recognize this as a love story, or did you think it was just like a cool movie?
I was like I don't know if I saw it necessarily as like either a love story or just like a like wow, like cool, because my favorite parts of movies have never been the action. I've always been more like dialogue driven. And I think
Mhm.
that was something that really resonated with me was I was super interested in the characters. So like my friend and I, who was the only other person I knew that was into Twilight, luckily lived 2 doors down from me. And so when we would set up like the Halloween decorations and stuff in front of our houses, we would pretend that we were like a vampire, like in the Twilight universe. And so we had powers and we wouldn't be like the Cullens, but we were basically the Cullens and we would essentially fight over who got to be the pseudo Alice.
Yeah.
Um, and because we were like, I want to have the future powers. Like, I want to have a power. That's cool. Not every Cullen has a power. Like, we wanted to be Alice.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
but so I think it just kind of tapped into that perfect like childhood imagination thing where I was always into the characters of things before even like the plot or the action. And so it had that going for it because lots of interesting characters. And then on top of that, it's just this dreamy world that just feels like perfect for someone who is an only child and uses most of their time imagining and like play acting and daydreaming. So it was perfect for a little lonely child. I was on a constant loop between depending on like who I was playing with. It was like Twilight, Teen Titans, Star Wars, Harry Potter, like, it was these and what's so funny is all those other ones require kind of these in your face superpowers, but Twilight, it's like they have powers, but it's not really the emphasis of any of the series necessarily, especially, it gets more so towards the end because there are these greater threats, but ultimately it's just about Bella and like her personal internal and external conflicts that are going on.
Which I love, which it makes it
Yes.
relatable. Like as you said, the powers are ancillary. And in Alice's cases, her power is largely used as a plot device. I really wanted to see more Alice in Midnight Sun than what we got. And a lot of people are like, wait a minute, we got a lot of Alice in Midnight Sun. And we did. We did see quite a bit of Alice in Midnight Sun, but we saw mostly through the lens of her visions, right? How can she
True.
help progress Edward and Bella's story toward the place it needs to go? And so we saw her again, mostly in the form of this pseudo omniscience that she has, right? Whereas I wanted to see more characterization. I wanted to see what Alice is doing in her spare time with Jasper. I want to see her playing
Yes.
dress up with Rosalie. I want to see her having, tender moments with Carlisle or making music with Edward. Again, she was mostly used in the sense of like, Alice, what do you see? Alice, what's next?
Yeah.
What's the probability of this? I mean, I really wanted to know more about her characterization and how she spends her free time. And what I really wanted to see was her reaction to seeing the tape that James made, and
Yes.
his mention of
Yes.
her, his mention that he knew her. And in the book, Edward skims over that. He's like, I knew Alice was processing all of that, but I didn't have time to care about that right now. I was like, wait a
Yeah.
minute, Edward, go back.
No,
I
go
care
back.
about that. Go back. So there was so much more that I wanted to see, and I feel like there's so much untapped potential with this series because, as you said, it's so character driven, and what we're all drawn to with these are the characters. Like we can Stephanie did such a good job at fleshing them all out and like establishing
Mhm.
their personalities, their likes and dislikes that you can like drop any of the characters into like a real life, like hypothetical moment, and you know exactly what they would do in that moment because
Yes.
they're so well fleshed out. It's like if she really wanted to, this woman could write spin-off after spin-off, short stories,
Genuinely.
anything. She has a license to like print money, and I almost respect the fact that she's not doing it. She's like, I
Mm.
don't have any stories that I feel a burning desire to tell right now, so I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
But in my heart, I'm like, "But I wish you would."
But I want it also because yeah,
But I
those
will.
are my favorite parts, and I feel like that's why I like the books so much more than the movies, like overall, especially the first and the second, Twilight and New Moon. Like, I just feel like we get so much character moments and like just because there is no rush, they don't have to fit everything within like 2 hours.
Exactly.
We get time to just have these little chill moments.
Can I actually confess something to you?
Yes.
I've only read Breaking Dawn once, and it was the day it came out. I read it, like, cover to cover, and, I have never picked it up again because I'm not gonna say I hated it, but it very strongly was not where I thought I know we're getting spicy here.
No, no,
It was
no.
very
No, no,
strongly
no, we're
not
not.
where I thought, "Oh, okay, you feel the same way? Good. Okay, good. Because I know a lot of people who really enjoyed Breaking Dawn. It just was not how I thought things were going to go. It's not that it was poorly written. It's not, I have no gripes with any of that. I think Stephanie Meyer is a very engaging storyteller. She told the story she wanted to tell. It was not the story I wanted to read, and that's my problem, right? But I think it was the fade to black moment on the honeymoon for me. And then, directly transitioning into like Bella's spine breaking and the graphic nature of her birth anatomy and everything. I was like, why do we focus so much on Bella's suffering and on none of her pleasure? I was like,
Yes.
there's no, I don't know. It sent a very weird message to me. That one thing is okay. And we know it's okay because we see women's bodies brutalized in media over and over and over again, but there is still a taboo about showing women giving and receiving pleasure. And
Yes.
that really bothered me. For that reason, among, many others, I've never picked it up again. So obviously I've seen the movie many times. Um, but there's nothing compelling me to read Breaking Dawn again.
No, so I've read Twilight and New Moon a bunch of times. I've read Breaking Dawn, I think like 4 times, and I've read Eclipse twice. I read it once when I was like 10, I think, and then I read it again in like 2021. And it was worse than I remembered. I hated it the first time. I loved all the, I love the backstory stuff and everything, but I have a whole episode of this podcast that these viewers will have seen now at this point, where I just go on bullet point after bullet point of why I cannot stand Eclipse. Like, why, as a reader, it is like viscerally upsetting to me the entire time. And it
Dang, I
mostly
need
has
to
to
catch up on
do
that.
with the characterization. Mostly of Jacob completely character assassinated. Edward's
Yeah.
not great in it either, and they even do our girl Alice dirty in, like, she kidnaps Bella because Edward buys her a car. Like, okay, really,
And
for real, guys?
it's so true, like, there is something to be said for that, like, on one hand, it's like, it is fascinating to show that Alice is a character with depth. She's not just a happy, bouncy best friend character, she can be manipulative,
Yeah,
she is not above, doing what she needs to get what she wants. I mean, she is presented as this manic pixie dream girl, but she is a person with her own interests, her own drive, her own motivations, and, we get to see a little bit more of that in Eclipse. So from that standpoint, I enjoyed the characterization of Allison
yeah,
Eclipse, but at the same time, it's like you were actually not acting in Bella's best interest. So,
mhm,
in many, many ways, I would say you are not Bella's best friend. You
yeah,
are Edward's best friend, and you are acting in his interest. And I get it. I mean, they've been family members, besties for like decades by that point. You're not going to override that knowing some girl for less than a year. But we're continually told Alice and Bella are best friends. And what we see again and again is that Alice and Edward are best friends.
yeah, genuinely.
Eclipse, yeah, Eclipse was kind of like the cherry on top of that. So I'm gonna need to go back and watch that episode because my husband hates Eclipse. He's never read the books, but he hates the movie. Like he will rewatch
I hate it
any
too.
Twilight
Same.
anytime with me, but he will not watch Eclipse again. And so I feel like you would have many interesting things to discuss as like Eclipse haters.
Yeah, I think your your gripes with Breaking Dawn, with it being like Bella, the suffering and not the emphasis on the pleasure that it's the entire series has been culminating to, is like her
Mhm.
happiness in this moment. She finally gets like what she wants in a bunch of different aspects. And that's not focused on as much as like, oh, well, actually she's physically in pain and then she's mentally in pain because people are coming to kill her daughter. And, there's all this stuff going on that's just like awful. And I mean, obviously that is horrible too. And I feel that when I read Breaking Dawn, which is why it's not a constant reread or anything for me. But
Yeah.
with Eclipse, it was like her lack of autonomy. Like it's
Mhm.
just everyone just pulling her around that are like bigger and stronger than her. And she gets no real say. Like in the other books, at least like her wishes are somewhat respected. And it's like in this one, it's just like, no, we're just gonna pull you around. But so you mentioned the relationship between Bella and Alice, and I know that you are a fellow shipper, and I love that. But I know you also love Jasper, as do I. We love them together, of course. Um, but I know that you are also very impassioned Bella's
I
shipper.
am. I am. I think Jasper and Alice is Alice's like head comp moment. Like I love that for what it is in canon. I love the possibility of Alice and Bella. Because I think there was a very queer underpinning there that I'm not sure Stephanie realized that she wrote. Um
So gay. It's so gay.
like it's like I don't know if she looks back on the things that she wrote and realizes that like straight people don't think that way.
Yeah, they don't. They don't. And as someone who is queer, like I don't know. It's like, yeah, this isn't I don't know what it's like to think straight, but this isn't it. Like this
Yeah.
the way you're describing women, especially like even just like Rosalie, who there isn't like this tension, there's still this like lust, almost like, do I want to be her or do I want to date her type thing going on with Bella. It's like she's panicking. Bella is having gay panic a lot of the series.
Yeah, and she doesn't recognize it for what it is because
Mhm.
Stephanie doesn't recognize it for what it is. But like even her thoughts around like Alice, like as she, when Alice comes back in New Moon, like drinking in her scent and the feel of her body, and it's just like,
Oh yeah, there's
you
so
know,
many
there's
descriptions of
there's this lot.
like Alice being like physically hard. Like I pressed myself against like her hard skin. Like she's always focusing on like her skin and the way that she feels in a way that I don't even feel like Bella thinks about with Edward. And then there's also she always is emphasizing her voice. Like no one else gets all these voice descriptors of like this bell-like
Mm.
voice and it trilling and it like ringing and stuff. Whereas like I don't know what most of the characters sound like, but for some reason Bella is very descriptive about a lot of parts of Alice all the time.
It's very true, and I love playing into that, and it's always nice to have a cosplay partner who feels comfortable doing that, which I've been like really blessed to have. Because Twilight is on its surface a very white, straight,
Hmm.
type of non-inclusive thing, and the more we can make it something that everyone feels comfortable in, I mean, the better it is for everyone. And so, if you're someone who likes non-canon shipping or likes to imagine characters as queer to better see yourselves in them, I'm all for it, and I love to create those spaces for people because it's what I want to see too, right? It's the subtext that I read, certainly. So like why
Yeah.
not draw on that as inspiration and bring it to life? Because it's there, whether you read it that way or not, it's certainly there.
Yeah, it's not like a case where, oh, it's wishful thinking, like wouldn't they work so well together? It's like it's there, it's in the text. Like it's very,
Yeah.
you don't have to search very hard for it. Actually, later in this episode, stick around and I'm going to read some of my favorite Alice, Bella, oh my gosh, this is super gay quotes from the books.
Ooh,
So
okay.
if y'all want to hear that, then it will. There's also a chapter for it in this YouTube video somewhere, where you can also skip to that and then come back to this if you're like, now I gotta know.
Well,
Um,
I think everyone's going to want to see that. And there is actually a surprising number of Rosalie and Bella shippers as well, to the point where many people think that Rosalie and Bella had a lot more gay tension than Alice and Bella did, because there is no tension really between Alice and Bella.
yeah,
They're friends, they're fast friends, there is that like what seems sort of to be like mutual pining, but like the real anger and tension seems to come from Bella and Rosalie. So they're not my preferred ship, but if you see it and if that's your preferred ship, if you want a hot, tall blonde to step on you, I
which
understand
I
and
mean,
go forth.
blame you. Yeah, I mean, enemies to lovers, it's right there.
You know?
I mean, we get enemies to friends, and it's very captivating. And so it's only a logical leap to be like, well, we're already getting all these gay descriptors and this physical attraction from Bella, so it makes sense.
Why
So
not?
shout out to the Bella Rosalie shippers out there. I know you exist. I see you. We hear you, and we support you.
100%.
Definitely. Um, so we've talked about your cosplaying of Alice, your start at FTF, and about Alice and Bella, but is there and about how you want more of the little moments as
Of
well,
course.
which we all do. Is there anything else about Alice that you feel like needs to be said, you want to put out into the world?
What needs to be said about Alice? Well, I think I touched on this a little bit before, but Alice is a very called her Ella. I'm thinking Bella, Alice. Ella, is that their shipping name? Um, Alice is a complex character. As I said, she is a lot of people's manic pixie dream girl. I know a lot of men love Alice.
Mhm.
I speak at the festival every year. I have a lot of very passionate Twilight dads coming up to me, wanting to talk to me and profess their love for Alice. But there is a lot more to her, she's not just the sprightly best friend, she is a person with a complicated past who didn't know who she was for a very long time, who pulled herself up from a very dire situation, not knowing who she was when she woke up, sort of receiving her identity through a vision of Jasper and building a life from there, waiting for him, waiting to meet the Cullens. There's a lot about her that we don't know, which stands to reason that there's a lot to talk about, right? There's a lot that made her into the person that she is today that we just don't get to see because it's not in service of Bella's story. So I love to, not just be the kind, Alice who has a shopping addiction. I love to be, the sassy Alice who does manipulate Bella into, a sleepover. I love to be the determined Alice in Volterra, who sees every single outcome and chases down a highway in a stolen Porsche in service of saving her brother. Like I love to bring all of these different facets of Alice to life because she's not a one-dimensional character. And I hope that anyone who meets me at Forever Twilight and Forks gets an opportunity to maybe see that. And of course, at Forever Twilight and Forks, I am everyone's best friend. Chances are the interactions are going to focus around your cute outfit, or where you're from, or thank you for coming, or but
We aren't
for
just gonna start bullying random people.
yeah, no, exactly. But if you get a chance to see me interact with Bella or with Rosalie, when that sassy side does come out, it's because there is more to Alice, and she's got 24 hours in a day to fill with no sleep. So, she's gonna be a complex person. So I think just look at Alice with an open mind, because she is so much more than a girl with a big closet. That's it.
Definitely. I feel like that's another thing the books really highlight is we get a lot more of every character, so we get a lot more of the three-dimensional qualities of every character. The characters are easily identifiable by their traits, but they aren't just their traits. They are these fully rounded characters, and I feel like that's so special to see, and as we get a lot of it in Alice, for sure.
Exactly. But, with such limited screen time, I don't think Ashley Greene had, we see so much of Bella that we can all easily do, a Kristen Stewart as Bella impression, right? Like, you feel for someone when they have such little, like as Alice in the books, like she has so much time, there's so much room to imagine and so much description of what she was like, right? But Ashley Greene had like such little screen time to play with compared to Kristen Stewart and Robert Pattinson, and not enough time to like develop much of an on-screen presence or like signatures ticks or anything like Kristen Stewart has. So she was relying a lot on her voice. But like in Forks, since I spend 4 days a year doing nothing but immersing myself in Alice, I've been able to extrapolate what we know of her from the books and the films and say, hey, what might that look like in real life? Like from a 360 view, how would it look like if I'm entering a room? Am I skipping? Am I super light on my feet? What does it look like entering a room with Jasper? Are we holding hands? Are we side by side? A lot of people like to see the touchy-feely Jasper and Alice from the films, but we know they weren't like that in the book. So it's like striking a balance between the two. It's how you carry yourself, how you hold yourself, how you act around the other Cullens in the family. And that for me has been like such a great joy in getting to like cultivate as a cosplayer and as a character actor. And yeah, just so grateful to get to do that.
Yeah, and it's incredible. I feel like you as well as, all the other actors at FTF, it's so obvious that you guys, and not even just the FTF actors, but other cosplayers like I
Yeah.
encountered there, or have seen online. It's very obvious that a lot of thought is going into before you even go out. It's not even just in the moment, what am I doing? It's all this prep work of like, how would my character stand? How would they interact? What are they thinking? Not just what are they saying, but like what are they thinking in this moment? How can I show that on my face? Um, and so it's so immersive and it also shows just a love for the characters as well. Like every Alice cosplayer is just you can just see the love in how much thought y'all have to put in. Um and I feel like it's even more special for these characters that we don't see all the time, that you have to kind of take your own liberties for. Um, and it's just an incredible thing to see.
I completely agree. And I think we've cultivated a really great community of Alice cosplayers on Instagram in particular. We all help each other out. There are listings that we share for clothing, for example. I have a blog, goaskalicecullen.com, where I've shared my personal information on like how to find Alice's clothing pieces, sharing brand names. Because ultimately, like at the end of the day, yes, like there can be only one mentality for Forever Twilight and Forks, in terms of like, yes, there is an official cosplay troupe. That doesn't mean that no one else can cosplay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that no one else can do it well. It doesn't mean that I don't want to see other Alice cosplayers absolutely killing it and being their beautiful, unique selves as Alice. So I think we've really cultivated this like small but like tight knit and like trusted community of Alice cosplayers who do it for, like you said, the love of the character, the love of Twilight, the love of performance, bringing something of yourself into the character. You know, my rendition of Alice is not the end all be all. Like if you imagine Alice differently, if you think she would do something differently, I want to see it because I'm a fan too, and I want to see like a different interpretation, you know? So if you're like an aspiring Alice cosplayer out there, or if you're a current Alice cosplayer, like either A, like go for it, I want to see it, or B, keep doing it because I want to see it.
You're like, either way, I want to see it.
Yes,
The
please.
takeaway of this is we want to see your Alice cosplay
Yeah,
for
100%.
sure.
Like tag me in it, like I'll repost you on my story. Like I don't know, there's just there can't be only one. There's room for many, and just like, you know, Alice sees 1,000 different possibilities at every moment. There's 1,000 different Alice cosplayers out there waiting to be born and in their own vision. So yeah, love that.
The Twilight multiverse.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah, when people, you know, people can be quite open about their critic. Oh, you don't look exactly like Ashley Green, blah blah blah. Because a lot of people take what they see on screen as gospel. They don't realize that, you know, had Ashley Green been having a bad day during her audition, Lucy Hale might have been cast as
Yeah,
Alice. You know what I mean? Like there are 1,000 different possibilities, and this is the timeline that we landed in. So I think we're all really variants of Alice Cullen, and we represent the possibility of who she is, right? Because when you're reading the book, if you've read the book before you saw the movies, you may not have Ashley Green as your litmus for like who Alice
yeah.
is. You might imagine the girl you work with, or the girl you had a crush on at school, or a really pretty girl you saw at the bus stop, or a model that you saw walking a runway 5 years ago. Like anyone can be Alice in your own mind. So I think cosplayers help bring that to life.
Definitely. And then a perfect segue about cosplayers bringing that to life. You obviously are one of them and are incredible. And would you like to plug anything before we sign off?
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. It was a great conversation. Really loved getting to connect with you a little bit more. Love your account. So,
Thank
a
you.
real
I
honor
love
for
running it.
me.
Oh, shut
Um,
up.
I
Be
just like
quiet.
I'm a big fan of meme accounts. Like I think that there is like a lot that is funny about the saga, and I think that, you know, to laugh at something is to love it the hardest, right? So
Very true.
I do love that. But if anyone is watching this and wants to follow me on Instagram, I'm at Mary Alice Brandon. Am I Mary Alice Brandon or Mary dot I'm Mary dot Alice dot Brandon. I'm Mary Alice Brandon in some places like TikTok. But you can generally find me if you're searching for Mary Alice Brandon just about anywhere. I have my blog, goaskalicecullen.com. It's not being updated super frequently right now, but I do have brand information about Alice's clothing on there, some fan fiction and short stories that I wrote, kind of imagining different times in Alice's life. And you can also follow my cosplay troupe, the Olympic Coven, at the Olympic Coven, basically everywhere. And if you're coming to Forever Twilight and Forks or FTF Equinox, I would love to see you there. So hit me up.
Incredible. Yes, love guys, go check them out. Your Instagram, there's so many beautiful like glamour shots of Alice in all these different situations. And then your TikTok, I'm not really like a TikTok person, which I know is crazy. But I will just occasionally like see one of your TikToks because I do follow you. So whenever I get on once a month or so, I'll see your TikToks and I'm like, oh, these are so funny. Like I feel like so much of kind of your humor and your physical characterization really is on TikTok. And so it's really cool to see like the two sort of sides, like all these gorgeous, beautiful pictures on Instagram, and then this like funny, moving, not to be like from the 1920s or something, these moving pictures that these kids got on TikTok.
Have you heard of
Yeah,
this new technology?
guys, they're cloning sheep now. But yeah, it's great, and I've loved having this conversation with you. I think the only reason why we don't continue on is because time. We could talk about 50,000 multifaceted parts of Alice, but alas, maybe at a later date.
Sounds good to me, and, I'm happy to come back anytime, and, before I go, I will just say that there is such a marked difference between my TikTok and my Instagram because TikTok was this thing that I kinda took up during the pandemic. I think a lot of people did. It's like, "Okay, I'm stuck in my house." Toronto had the longest lockdown out of any city in the world, so I was literally stuck in my house for more than 2 years. So, like, every weekend, I was creating content on TikTok because I was like, "What else do I have to do? Like, I need a creative outlet. I'm gonna go crazy. I can't go anywhere." So I was really, really, really active, on TikTok during the pandemic and creating content in my bathroom, against this really cool wallpaper that I have in there. So it's like doing my own hair, my own makeup. At the festival, I have the benefit of professional makeup artists, people helping me style and apply my wigs, obviously pro photographers with beautiful cameras and lenses. So it's like I feel like I really like look and feel my best at the festival and in the photography coming out of it. And then like TikTok is my chaotic gremlin self doing my own makeup really quick in the bathroom and being like, "What meme content can we pump out today?" Because I love applying a Twilight lens over every facet of humor. So, I'm glad you noticed the difference because there is a difference, and it's deliberate, and I love it.
Yeah, it's literally like the meme of like me during the weekday and
Oh
then
my
like
god,
me on the weekend. That's
so
you.
true,
That's your
so true.
accounts. That's so cool. That's so cool to hear. I feel like, as much as the pandemic, you know, was obviously like a bad thing, there was a lot that came out of it. Essentially possibly the Twilight Renaissance for one, like, would it have happened had the pandemic not existed? My account was a pandemic baby, so, it got the creative juices flowing for a lot of people, because we were all going stir crazy,
We
so
had nothing but time. And it showed.
genuinely.
Yeah, it's been so great to talk to you. Like I said, anytime you want to talk, Alice, I'm around.
Always, when do we not wanna talk, Alice?
So true, so true.
Well, it's great to see you again. And everyone, please check her out. All those accounts and the website and everything are incredible and give you such different little versions and things, but all about Alice, uh, which is the title of this episode. So perfect.
All right, full circle moment.
Full
So
circle.
follow me on Mary.Ellis.Brandon on Instagram, Mary Alice Brandon on TikTok, and the Olympic Coven on Instagram and TikTok.
Perfect. Bye.
Bye.
I'm joined today by the lovely Jenny, aka the one with vision on Instagram. They are a lovely, incredible Alice cosplayer, and I just
Right back.
wanted I wanted to invite them on to ask them a few questions about that and also just talk about Alice in general. But I figured, I mean, who better than Jenny and V to help me talk about Alice and learn more about Alice? Because who better than an Alice cosplayer who has to physically and mentally get in that headspace knows more about Alice? So, why Alice for you? What initially drew you to Alice?
Um, I definitely in general find myself drawn to kind of I'll say whimsical characters or quirky characters for sure. And Alice definitely stood out as that for me. But I don't know what I could take some guesses. I don't even remember what initially kind of solidified Alice as my favorite character when I first read the series. Um, I was, I think, 12, so it's been a while. But I think just the levity that she brings to the series and her kind of sass and charm all kind of drew me to her. I think in a lot of ways um she has a lot of qualities that I want to have or like
Mhm.
present more. And especially growing up, I feel like this character that y- you know I, she's very cool, she's a vampire, she's stylish, she has all these lovely things, but then we were kind of chatting off recording before, just about the also weight of having a gift like Alice's and how she's still able to go through the world and have this enjoyment and joyousness about her despite that, which I think is really admirable. The world can be pretty bleak sometimes, but being
Yeah.
able to still work through that and find family and friends and like a support network and enjoy your life despite that or any hardships is huge.
Definitely.
So long-winded, but that is probably what
No, it's
brought me to it.
perfect. I noticed in there you mentioned you being 12. Was that the age when, like, the book, the movie, or when you first started cosplaying? What's that age for you?
So, I think the first movie had just come out or was just about to come out.
Mhm.
And so they'd released the promotional covers in the mass market size that were
Uh-huh.
at grocery stores and things like that. And both myself and my brother were really voracious readers as kids. And I didn't really, he found several series that really just kept him reading. And I hadn't found something that drew me in quite so much that there was another place to go. Most of my favorite
Right.
books were standalone. And my mom saw it at the grocery store and bought it and brought it home and is like, I think you'll like this.
Shout out,
Um,
mom.
and yeah, shout out mom. She has influenced my life and some of the friends I've had just by giving me that book, which is kind of special. But I destroyed that book. I still have it. It's very well loved, but I took
Aw.
it everywhere. It is like all cracked along the spine. The pages are it's just decimated. But I zoomed through that book and I didn't really have friends that liked that at the time. So I went to the movie with my mom. Um, and yeah, and the rest is kind of history. So that was when I read the first book. I didn't start cosplaying until I was, how old was I? 22, perhaps? That sounds right. I think I was like 22. I first started kind of dipping my toes into that. And then I followed a lot of people in the cosplay community and just the Twilight online community
Mhm.
for a long time. But I either followed on like my private account or just my personal account, which was on private for a long time. So I didn't really engage. I observed and was like, oh,
Right.
I want to be a part of that. But there was a point in middle school when I was bullied a lot, and Twilight was definitely
Yeah.
there was a time where Twilight was seen as like stupid and whatever, and I started being much quieter about how much I
Mhm.
liked it because I didn't
Definitely.
want to give more fuel to that. So it took a long time until I felt able to come back to it in a way where I wasn't I feel kind of pathetic saying that as an adult, but like as a teenager, you don't want to give I think a lot of people
No,
could relate to that. You
I
don't wanna give any
I
reason that you
remember
don't get it.
reading Eclipse in 5th grade, like, under the table, like, because I didn't want anyone to see, like, the book I was reading, you know? It's like, "Oh, it's
Yeah.
fine that I'm reading, but I don't wanna call attention," then it becomes a whole thing, and yeah, I mean, by middle school, I was like, what is Twilight?" I was like, "Yeah, sure, uh-huh." Because you're, like, 100% right, you don't want to you don't wanna do anything that makes you stand out in a negative way,
And
barely
maybe
even in a
that's
positive way.
yeah. Well, and honestly, maybe that's part of what drew me to Alice in a way is the Cullens are obviously different. You know that right away in the books. They stand out like a sore thumb, but in this way that they're weird, but everyone kind of is in awe of them. Like they're very unabashed, which is surprising. I think the logic there is interesting because you'd think as vampires, like they want to fit in, and on
Mhm.
paper, that's kind of what they say, like they're trying to fit in. but they don't.
But
They
they
stand out
don't.
like sore thumbs.
Right.
Uh, but I think, like, I don't know, they're not ashamed of that. They don't hide, and I think that's also very admirable, when I think of approaching the series as a young preteen
Mhm.
and wanting to feel more confident and wanting to be seen as cool and all these things, and they really body that.
Definitely.
So,
I feel like really especially Alice. Alice is the weird girl. Like even everyone at the school is like, even out of the Cullens, Alice is weird, you know?
yeah.
And she's not ashamed and she doesn't tone it down. I mean, obviously she tones down the vampire stuff, but like in terms of her personality, she's just like, no. And that's
Yeah,
great because even though, yes, she's been around for a while, and so, you know, she kind of has gotten over that I care what people think phase. At the same time, she's still mentally a teenager. And so that has to be still difficult, you know, for her to overcome having the, emotionalness of a teenager.
for sure. I think in a way it's very brave. And I wish I was, especially in retrospect, I wish I had been braver, to be myself and, like what I like and not worry. So
Yeah,
there's
I think
definitely that too.
I don't think anyone ever regrets being too much, but I think that
Oh,
like all of us regret not being enough, not doing enough and being enough of ourselves. And so if you're listening to this and you happen to be in like, I mean, I doubt anyone's in middle school that's listening to this, but if you happen to be in middle school or high school or even just like college, like just go for it. You're never going to regret doing something. You're only going to regret not doing something that you wanted to do, you know?
Oh, 100%. And as I mentioned, I wanted to cosplay and I wanted to cosplay for years, even pre the desire to like Twilight cosplay. I always wanted to be involved in those kinds of communities and was really scared. And when I finally did start posting that kind of content online and finding community there, it was super scary, but I don't regret it at all. It was so worthwhile to put myself out there. I've met so many wonderful people through it.
Definitely. I started my account to just scream into the void so I wasn't annoying my friends and family who don't care. And it ended up just, one thing led to another. And I remember getting 100 followers was like, holy crap. It was like, oh my gosh, who's seeing this? Like, I'm not, I'm just putting stuff out there so I can get it off my phone. And then I just ended up talking to so many good people. And it was just constantly like laughing at things. And I have never regretted it for a second. Anything that I've ever done that I was like worried would be too much, I've never regretted doing. I've always been like, oh, that was so cool of me. That was so great. And so it's great to see
Yeah,
that in Alice and have that positive role model there.
for
Um,
sure.
so
But
how
yes, if anyone out there is has their reservations,
go
please
for
just
it?
go for it.
Yes. So kind of jumping off of that, has embodying that character and cosplaying Alice, has that affected how you act outside of the character?
Um, I wouldn't say it, I wouldn't it's so it's tricky. I went to theater school,
Mm,
and that is very much a passion of mine is performing. And I think you're gonna take something away from every character you approach, whether that's something you carry with yourself every day or it just gives you some perspective on specific things. Um, I don't know. I don't know that I find myself feeling like, oh, that's so Alice of me. That's her influence on me in my day to day. But I think weirdly enough, like cosplay has been huge for my self confidence, and Alice is a character that I feel really good stepping into her shoes. And I think that has been a really generally positive influence on me, and is something that impacts my day-to-day life for sure.
That's awesome. That's great. Like we
Yeah.
said, don't have the reservations because that's not what that's not what you're gonna regret.
Do
Um,
you find any part of her is, like, influencing your day-to-day?
well, I basically, like, just started Alice because I cut my hair, you know? Like, I've had Alice clothes, but I wouldn't say I, like, really cosplayed Alice. I've done some Esme, done some Bella. I'm about to do Edward next, which is gonna be very fun.
I'm very excited.
Yes, but Alice is, like, relatively new, and cosplay in general is I did, like, some, like, anime stuff in, like, middle school, but that was, like, the extent of that. But I totally get it from like a theater aspect because in high school, I mean, I was doing theater like nonstop. I was doing community productions at the same time that I was doing like my high school productions at the same like I was doing like five things. All my free time was theater, like all of it, you know. And so I totally get
Definitely
that
relate to that.
a bit of the character, you know, you realize something about yourself in tapping into a character, and you also can, because you have to think about where they're coming from, maybe you can kind of like see bits of other people in that character, like people you've come across, people you've seen, people you know, in order to kind of get into that mentality. uh
100%.
so yeah, I totally get it from that aspect, and I do think we all it I think for me, it's less about finding something in them and more about tapping into something in me, maybe not even something I always project, but something that is there in order
Yes, yes,
to highlight that and make it easier.
absolutely. Absolutely. I definitely relate to that. Um, even even Alice, I think there's in what my friends have told me they see in me, and people in my life, I definitely think there's traits that I share with characters I love, Alice included. So I definitely agree with you. I think there's things in yourself that stepping into a character might bring out more. That's a really great way of wording it.
Yeah, and I mean, I also feel like that's also a great confidence booster too, because you go, well, I love these things in this character, and I have a little of that. And so you're kind of giving yourself like a little compliment at that same time. Like that's a good way to look at it, where it's like, you know, whenever you're feeling down about yourself, it's like, well, if my favorite characters were acting the same way, maybe they said the same thing that I'm so embarrassed about or whatever. It's like, would I be having the same reaction, or am I just beating up on myself because it's me, you know?
100%.
So
It's a really nice context given to you to look at things.
yes. So, switching gears, how does your characterization when you play Alice, maybe, you know, when you're interacting with other people or when you're just having to pose for a photo, does it differ at all from either Alice in the books or the movies or both?
Um, I think it is different from both, but I definitely draw upon both as well. Um, yeah, I think Ashley Greene's portrayal has it has similarities to the books and it has differences. I really liked her interpretation of the character, but I also think whenever movies are adapted from books, there's things that get lost or things
Mhm.
that have to be cut, and then you have to adapt other things, and there's a trickle down effect there. So I try to bring a little bit of both into what I do with Alice. Um, I don't know. I think for myself, I am canonically much taller than Alice is. Like
I think
a lot
everyone in
taller.
the world is like a lot taller than Alice is.
Yeah, a lot of people are.
Like
I think
99% of people that aren't
isn't
children are
isn't she like
taller.
4'8" or something in the
Yeah, it's
books?
something really crazy. I don't yeah, it's something like I think it's
Very
maybe 4'8" or 4'10", something like that, and I have a
very
friend
tiny
who's
though.
4'10", and they make me, who I'm 5'2", and I feel like a giant around them, so, you know, it's quite crazy when you imagine book heights, you know, with
Yeah,
Alice and then Jasper being over
towering
6 feet, just
above.
huge.
Yes. So not that it matters. I think any height, any body type, um, anything, anyone can cosplay any character, and I love how differently people interpret characters and things like that. I think it's really cool and really special. But I definitely try to um she has a very airy way of movement and very pixie-like.
Mhm.
um and I definitely try to tap into that because I think especially um it sounds so silly, but being that much taller, like, I think I'm almost a foot taller than what Alice
Mm.
is in the books. Um, I'm 5'8",
Mhm.
and, it's not that tall, but it's something that I
Yeah,
was weirdly insecure about when first starting to cosplay Alice, so I definitely, for myself, tap into a very, like, light and airy movement style where I can. I did dance, when I was young for a
mhm,
long time, and I definitely find I channel those postures and, uh, even just, like, what I do with my hands and stuff.
mhm,
I definitely am channeling that kind of performance body,
mhm.
but yeah, I don't know. I try to bring details from both the books and the movies into my interpretation of Alice because, as I said, I really do like Ashley Greene's
Yeah.
interpretation, and growing up with the movies, that was very impactful to me.
Mhm.
So even now when I read the books, there are obviously things in Alice's description that are even very different from the movies and the style choices they made, but I still find Ashley Greene's portrayal influences what I picture in my brain now when I read those things.
Definitely. Last little question, and then we'll do our little sign off, and you can plug your stuff. Uh, do you interpret, and I know the answer already, but do you interpret Alice as like a gay or a bi character?
Um, a tough question. I am queer myself, and I think as a queer person, to me, Alice is so obviously queer coded.
Yeah.
There are so many things in the books and in the movies as well that just read as queer to me. Um, it's tricky because as much as there are problematic parts of
Mhm.
Jasper's character, I did really like, um,
Right.
especially when I was younger, like there was lots of things I really liked about Jasper and Alice's relationship. And so I don't know if I think of Alice as gay.
Mhm.
I definitely view her as queer or bisexual, in canon of my mind,
Agree,
because
totally.
I don't think there's any way. I don't know. I can't read how she talks about Bella and how I don't know the way she interacts
It
with Bella, the way
just
she thinks of Bella. I don't know. Does
Yeah,
not feel
especially reading her
heterosexual.
internal thoughts in Midnight Sun. It's like this isn't something's going on here. This is a little fruity. Like this is not 100%
Yeah.
there's no way.
And I know Alice definitely aids Bella and Edward's relationship, like the start of
Mhm.
it, and is it definitely helps them out. Like she plays wingman, I think,
Mhm.
quite a bit in different ways. But despite that, I still think there's a lot of moments that I'm like, okay, now which one of you is dating
Yeah, who are
Bella?
you trying to help out here? I think it's one of
Yeah,
those situations where Bella and Edward are very good for each other, and Alice and Jasper are very good for each other, but different time, different place. If they weren't around, I mean, there is this like inherent, they just go very well together, Alice and Bella, and they
mhm,
both need each other, and they're both very good friends. But there's also this like inherent attraction throughout the series with them. So
yeah,
if let's just say in a different world, in a different timeline, you know, in a different possibility in Alice's mind, it
yeah,
something, something,
100%.
something would be there.
They'd be the perfy, the perfy,
The perfect.
perfy. the perfect grumpy sunshine, like, romance novel
So
combo.
true.
Um, yeah, and I guess Edward could have that going, but I think I don't know, Bella is so much more, like, reserved than Alice, and I don't know, I think Alice really brings out a different side of Bella, and that would be so charming in a romantic
For
pairing to
sure.
me. Um,
Definitely.
but yes, so I definitely view Alice as that. But Bella too, I
Mhm.
I definitely think there's a lot of queer coding in Bella's character, even just like any character that's not like other girls. Um, I think
Very
I've
true.
seen so many people like that I know that grew up and ended up coming out as queer, uh, or gay or
Mhm.
whatever. Like
Yeah, I mean, I went through
so many.
my not like other girls phase just to realize, oh, I'm not a girl. So
Yeah.
that's, you know, that's one way.
Yes, absolutely. And I having been through those experiences myself, having had a lot of my close friends go through those, I see them and I'm like, I know what you
Like,
are. I know what you
interesting. I
are.
know what you are, Bella. Say
Yeah,
it
well,
out
even
loud. Queer.
literally. And I think, Kristen Stewart, uh, queer icon,
Mhm.
I think she could probably make an argument for Bella Swan as well. But I think
Definitely.
it's really interesting because people, not obviously not everyone views them as queer coded characters, but almost everyone I know that is queer sees them that way. So it's
Definitely.
like, if
And
you know, you know.
right. And all the evidence that I'll be including at the end of this video, this podcast, like over half of it is like Bella being gay towards Alice. You know, a lot of the evidence about Alice being queer comes from Bella's interactions with her and how Bella sees her and the physical intimacy going on, the head on the shoulders, the hugging, the lifting up. You know, there's a lot of stuff going on from Bella's POV as well, especially like a new moon, the letter writing. Like she wasn't writing emails to Edward.
I
Just
know.
saying.
Well, and it's very interesting, because obviously, I don't know, especially in the movie, the monologue Bella kind of has, um, I don't know. It seems like she's sad that all the Cullens have left, but like I truly think she's feeling the loss of this breakup with Edward, especially after they've had this wonderful like summer together and
Right.
things seem to be going really well. But then also Alice is her best friend who's
Mhm.
maybe not just a friend.
Right.
Um, and New Moon, honestly, could have been in an alternate universe. That could have been, in my mind, the realization that, oh, maybe these are more than friendly feelings. Like how
For
I'm
sure.
feeling this loss is more than a friendship. And
Yeah.
I've had that experience in my own
Mhm.
life when you've like disconnected with a friend and afterwards you're like, oh, maybe there was like
Maybe
more there
you're
for
right.
me.
Maybe that friendship loss was more than just a friendship loss,
Yeah.
for sure.
Um, I'm really, really excited to hear your evidence. I love
Oh yeah.
Bellis as a ship. I think it's very sweet.
Mhm.
Um, and I always love seeing fan content that is Bellis.
Of
They even
course.
have a better name than like Bellward.
Bellward. Ooh. Bellis is like, oh, Belle, like it's like a bell, Bellis. It's like so nice.
Yeah,
It's so dainty and beautiful. Bellward. It sounds like some weird,
yeah, exactly. It's just
some
like he's holding her down.
so true, so true. Oh my gosh. All right. Well, I'll let you go. I know that you had a meeting before this, so you're probably or an appointment rather before this. So I'm sure
Yes,
today has been a lot. I feel that deep in my core.
it has. But
Of
thank you so much for having me on.
course.
Sorry for being kind of all over the place and the bad internet connection.
Never.
But yeah, I'm really excited to see the rest of the podcast episodes and how everything turns out.
Of course. So thank you so much, Jenny. If you want to find her / them, they are on Instagram at the one with vision. That is the one with vision, and there will be a link if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're listening, one more time, that is the one with vision on Instagram. Thank you so
Yes.
much, Jenny. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Have a great night,
Of
Ellis.
course. You too. Bye.
Bye.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed those conversations. This is starting to sound like an outro. It is not. This is the aforementioned part of the podcast episode where I want to read you some very gay Alice Bella moments from all 4 of the books. Actually, 5, because I am also including Midnight Sun. So 5 of the books, and we have a lot to go through. If you hear noise in the background, my boyfriend, my lovely boyfriend, is cooking a burrito. So shout out to him. But if you hear noise, that's what it is. Wait, wait, wait. Alice trilled from the doorway. She danced across the room, dreamily graceful. This is already first quote we're starting out with. This is already so gay. As with Edward and Carlisle, I felt some shock as I really looked at her face for the first time. So lovely. So this is the first time that Bella is seeing Alice like while Bella is a vampire and like can actually see her like every pore, every imperfection, every perfection. And the first thing she has to say is so lovely. And then Alice says, "You promised I could be there the first time. What if you two run past something reflective?" So Alice is like, Bella needs to look presentable, even though she already looks presentable. Speaking of. So Bella asks, and this is also from Breaking Dawn right after Bella wakes up as a vampire. She says, "How do I look?" Edward smiled. "Gorgeous, of course." Then Alice cuts him off and says, "Yes, yes, she always looks gorgeous." Confirmed, Alice always thinks Bella is gorgeous. So now going back, here's some from New Moon. Arguably, I mean, Bella's gay for Alice a lot, but I would argue New Moon is like, it's very there. Bella writing the emails to her when Alice returns. It's crazy. Bella says, "You can stay here. Charlie would love that." Alice says, "I have a house, Bella." I nodded, disappointed but resigned. She hesitated, studying me. "Well, I need to go get a suitcase of clothes at the very least." I threw my arms around her. "Alice, you're the best." And then later on, "You'll come back?" I asked in a small voice. "I promise. 1 hour." I glanced at the clock over the kitchen table. She laughed and leaned in quickly to kiss me on the cheek. Then she was gone. I took a deep breath. Alice would be back. I suddenly felt so much better. I mean, this is not how a straight woman writes, Stephanie. This is not how a straight woman writes at all. The first time Bella meets Alice. "Hi, Bella," Alice said, and she bounced forward to kiss my cheek. If Carlisle and Esme had looked cautious before, they now looked staggered. There was shock in my eyes, too, but I was also very pleased that she seemed to approve of me so entirely. I was startled to feel Edward stiffen at my side. I glanced at his face, but his expression was unreadable. "You do smell nice. I never noticed before," she commented, to my extreme embarrassment. I mean, these are all like, if you gave me one of these passages and that was all we got, I'd be like, something's going on here. This is not, this. And then I don't even need to read all of it, but Alice like begging Bella to let her plan her wedding and for Bella to actually have a wedding. There's just a lot of like pleading and puppy dog eyes and all of that. That's just extra. It's just some cute banter. So here is a passage where Bella is contemplating the danger that she's putting everyone in. Inadvertently, I'm not blaming Bella, of course. And she thinks, "I knew what he was thinking, of the same thing I was thinking. Carlisle, Esme, Emmett, Rosalie, Jasper, and I forced myself to think the last name, and Alice. Like, she's worried about Edward's safety, but she's also, I mean, more so than any of the other Cullens. I mean, she can't even fathom Alice getting hurt. All right, here's another passage. You saw me become one of you. I barely mouthed the words. She sighed. It was a possibility at the time. At the time, I repeated. Actually, Bella, she hesitated and then seemed to make a choice. Honestly, I think it's all gotten beyond ridiculous. I'm debating whether to just change you myself. I stared at her, frozen with shock. Instantly, my mind resisted her words. I couldn't afford that kind of hope if she changed her mind. Did I scare you? She wondered. I thought that's what you wanted. I do, I gasped. Oh, Alice, do it now. I could help you so much, and I wouldn't slow you down. Bite me. Shh, she cautioned. The attendant was looking in our direction again. Try to be reasonable, she whispered. We don't have enough time. We have to get into Volterra tomorrow. You'd be writhing in pain for days. She made a face. And I don't think the other passengers would react well. I bit my lip. If you don't do it now, you'll change your mind. No, she frowned, her expression unhappy. I don't think I will. He'll be furious, but what will he be able to do about it? My heart beat faster. Nothing at all. I mean, all the talk of Alice changing Bella, like, it's this very intimate thing. And so Alice being like, I'll just step in and change you myself. And Bella being like, do it, do it, do it, bite me. It's like, okay. So here Alice is leaving, and Jake is over. This is a new moon. And Bella has this throwaway thought. It was a nasty catch-22. On the one hand, I wanted Alice to stay forever. I was going to die, metaphorically, when she left me. So forever. Interesting. It's almost like that's a romantic thing that Bella shares with Edward. So this is when Edward is leaving Bella in the woods. Alice isn't coming back, I realized. I don't know how he heard me. The words made no sound, but he seemed to understand. He shook his head slowly, always watching my face. No, they're all gone. I stayed behind to tell you goodbye. Alice is gone? My voice is blank with disbelief. Like, Edward, her boyfriend, is leaving, moving, going away forever, and she's still super focused on the fact that it's like, oh, Alice left, Alice betrayed me, Alice isn't coming back. So this is from Midnight Sun, so this next quote will be in Edward's perspective. I breathed. Remind me to thank Alice for that tonight. Alice is going to be there? From her tone, this was more comforting than my presence. It's interesting you bring that up, Edward. This again is from Midnight Sun. But you stayed, she breathed. Yes, I stayed. And Alice and Carlisle, her voice was full of wonder. I smiled just a little. They love you too, you know. They do love you, Bella. Maybe quite a bit. Again, from Midnight Sun. This is at the very end. So this is post fight with James. They're back from Phoenix. We all settled into the new routine with minimal delays. Alice took over as nurse and lady-in-waiting, and Charlie could not adequately express his gratitude. Bella, too, though embarrassed that she needed someone to help her with her most basic and intimate needs, was glad that someone was Alice. It was as if during those days in Phoenix, Alice's vision of Bella as her best friend had come fully to fruition. They were so at ease with each other, already flush with a plethora of inside jokes and confidences, as if they'd been companions for many years rather than just weeks. Charlie occasionally watched in confusion. wondering why Bella had never revealed their close connection, but he was too thankful for Alice, as well as charmed by her, to aggressively pursue answers. He was just happy with this, the best possible version of having a grievously injured daughter to care for. Alice was at the Swan House nearly as often as I was, though much more visible to Charlie during her time there. Charlie approves of Alice a lot, like way more than Edward. And Bella is super comfortable with Alice. And also there's a lot of language, especially in that passage. And this is later. This is like after Stephanie kind of knows that what we're thinking of Bella and Alice's relationship. This is from 2020. So it's very interesting when she says phrases like, she needs someone to help her with her most basic and intimate needs. See the word choice. And then they were so at ease with each other, already flush with a plethora of inside jokes and confidences. I mean, the word choice is it evokes a lot of, intimate visuals, and these are conscious choices that she's making as a writer, and so I just think that there's something very interesting in that. I considered Alice's fairly well-developed friendship with Bella, of which Bella was completely ignorant. Now that I felt assured about the future I was pursuing and the likelihood of it happening, it did feel a little cruel to keep Alice away from her. Did it now? Did it feel a little cruel to keep Alice away from her based on the fairly well-developed friendship with Bella? In her thoughts, suddenly another vision replaced the first. A gasp of relief choked through my lips when the horror was removed. But this vision was not much better. Alice and Bella, arms around each other, both marble white and diamond hard. Arms around each other as vampires, and the vision is not good for Edward. Almost barely better than the vision of Bella dead. And we know that he has a thing about her being a vampire, but there is some, again, like this, Alice specifically being in the vision with her arms around Bella, it could have just been Bella as a vampire, but that's not the vision that he's referring to that upset him. Edward, Alice thought urgently, a hint of panic in her tone that froze me in place. Edward, Alice protested shrilly. I love her, Edward. But she didn't love Bella the way I did. Her vision was preposterous, wrong. She was blinded somehow, seeing impossibilities, lies. I mean, for someone who can see inside Alice's head, he always seems to be in denial over kind of the subtext that he's seeing there. Violently in denial. Her vision was preposterous, wrong. She had to be blinded, seeing impossibilities, lies. And to have that level of like pushback, I feel like there is a level of connection between her and Bella that goes beyond what he wants to see. Edward, we have to talk. There was nothing for Alice and me to talk about. I shook my head ever so slightly, just once. Bella didn't see. Alice's thoughts were a command now. She shoved the picture I couldn't bear back into the forefront of my mind. I love her, Edward. I won't let you just ignore this. We're leaving and we're going to work this through. I'll give you to the end of the period. Make your excuses. Oh. Her totally benign vision from this morning in gym interrupted her string of orders. The brief introduction. I saw exactly how it happened now, down to the second. So this offensive, invalid, outdated vision was the catalyst missing before? My teeth clenched together. Fine. We would talk. I would sacrifice my time with Bella this afternoon to show Alice how wrong she was. In truth, I knew I wouldn't be able to rest until I made her see that, made her admit she was off this time. She saw the future shift as my mind changed. Thank you. I heard nothing, but then Alice stepped through the front door and came toward me with her arms held out. May I? She asked. You're the first one to ask permission, I smiled wryly. She lifted me in her slender arms as easily as Emmett had, shielding me protectively, and then we flew out of the door, leaving the light sprite behind us. Like Alice lifting up Bella in her arms, Bella feeling shielded protectively. Like, it's a very cute moment, but it's also like there is something charged. There's this undercurrent of sexual tension that goes on so much, especially in the first books when Alice and Bella are first like kind of introduced to each other. Bella's having this panic where we see like her struggle between Edward and Jacob, but there's also this kind of unspoken struggle between Edward and Alice that we actually get a voice to in Midnight Sun. And I remembered Alice sitting with me on the dark leather back seat. Somehow, during the long night, my head had ended up against her granite neck. My closeness didn't seem to bother her at all, and her cool, hard skin was oddly comforting to me. The front of her thin cotton shirt was damp. The front of her thin cotton shirt was cold, damp with the tears that streamed from my eyes until, red and sore, they ran dry. Alice sighed, and my grin became a glare. I know, she thought. Not yet. I'll wait until you're ready for Bella to know me. You should know, though, this isn't just me being selfish. Bella's going to like me, too. I didn't answer her as I hurried out the door. That was a different way of viewing the situation. Would Bella want to know Alice? To have a vampire for a girlfriend? Knowing Bella, that idea probably wouldn't bother her in the slightest. So, Edward is using girlfriend as in, like, girl that is a friend. Like, the way that you say, oh, me and my girlfriends are going to the mall. But, like, again, this was published in 2020. The word choice is very intentional and specific. And to follow it up with the line, knowing Bella, that idea probably wouldn't bother her in the slightest, is intentional. It has to be. At the prom, Bella describes the men one way and the women another way. And I want you to listen to the difference. Emmett and Jasper were intimidating and flawless in classic tuxedos. Alice was striking in a black satin dress with geometric cutouts that bared large triangles of her snowy white skin. And Rosalie was, well, Rosalie. She was beyond belief. Her vivid scarlet dress was backless, tight to her calves where it flared into a white ruffled train, with a neckline that plunged to her waist. I pitied every girl in the room, myself included. The men, one line, boring, says nothing even about like their body. Alice and Rosalie, oh, we're getting exact descriptions of their clothes, how they fit, how much skin they're showing, how it hits their curves. Like, Bella, okay, keep it in your pants, please. So this is when Alice returns in Breaking Dawn unexpectedly from her running away to do secret things. And this is Bella's reaction. Why don't you join us, Alice? Edward called loudly. Alice? Esme whispered in shock. Alice? Alice, 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 Alice. Other voices murmured around me. Alice, Arrow breathed. Both sides were motionless in expectation. The Volturi witnesses scowled in fresh confusion. Then Alice danced into the clearing from the southwest, and I felt like the bliss of seeing her face again might knock me off of my feet. Jasper was only inches behind her, his sharp eyes fierce. Close after them ran three strangers. The first, unimportant. We actually don't even care about the first, or the second, or the third, or any of the strangers. Because again, we're back to Alice. I rolled my eyes and Alice laughed, leaning forward. She was tucked under Edward's other arm to wink at me. I glared back. I loved her insanely, of course, but now that I'd had a chance to realize that she was really home, that her defection was only a ruse because Edward had to believe that she'd abandoned us, I was beginning to feel pretty irritated with her. Alice had some explaining to do. Alice sighed. Just get it off your chest, Bella. How could you do that to me, Alice? And then, later on, when they've made up, Okay, I interrupted. Sorry, I know it was rough for you too. It's just that, well, I missed you like crazy, Alice. Don't do that to me again. Alice's trilling laugh rang through the room, and we all smiled to hear that music once more. I miss you too, Bella, so forgive me and try to be satisfied with being the superhero of the day. And so I have many, many more of Bella just noticing subtle little Alice things, but I will conclude it there, as well as this episode. Thank you so much for joining me. If you've made it this far, you are why I do this. And please consider subscribing. I need 1,000 subs for my channel to be in the partner program, and that would mean a lot to me. So if you have a YouTube account, please consider hitting subscribe. And I hope to see you next week.